Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Spilled Milk. We are honoring Black Maternal Health Week, and we are going to allow some mothers to tell their stories. I have with me Shania Roman here.
Hello.
And my name is Rakisha Williams. I'm the Executive Director of Milk Like Mine, the Community Birthing and Breastfeeding Services Center here in Battle Creek, where I serve as a certified birth doula, a postpartum advocate, and lactation professional. For a lot of people may not know where the term spilled milk came from. In Black culture, we talk about spilling tea. That's talking all the gossip, all the latest news and things of that nature. But when it comes to breastfeeding, there's a saying that goes, there's no use in crying over spilled milk. But if you're a breastfeeding mom, you know that if you spill your breast milk, this is something that is important. It's a tragedy. So we combined those thoughts and came up with the term spilled milk to discuss real issues that are happening in our community. Today, we are going to let Miss Shania talk about her experiences being a Black mother and giving birth here. It's a scary place from time to time. But I want to authentically allow her to use her words to describe what she's been through. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Talk about how many kids you have.
Okay. Well, my name is Shania Roman, and I have 3 kids, aging from 4, 2, and 4 months, which makes me 4 months postpartum from my last baby. I have obviously a lot of different experiences in giving birth to 3 of them. One of my kids I gave birth in Chicago, 2 of them here in Michigan. And I would say being a Black mom, it definitely is scary during the birthing process because they don't take your pain seriously and they don't support you the way, they may in other races. I feel that way. My first birth was probably my most difficult. I had preeclampsia and wasn't even diagnosed with it. And it was to the point where it was life-threatening. And then it wasn't diagnosed till after my birth. And I was having complications even after the birth with high blood pressure and everything. So I had to go through that alone. And luckily at that time I had a sister-in-law who was a nurse who was able to stand by and help at that point. My second wasn't too hard, but I still didn't have someone to support to tell me what to look out for and everything. This last birth was a lot easier because, I had a doula here, and she was there every step of the way asking questions that I still didn't think to ask during the process. She helped me through breathing and everything. And that experience was probably the best experience I've had. Having someone is very important, being a Black mom in those situations.
So, what was the scariest moment for you with your first pregnancy? I know that being a first-time mom, you're experiencing everything exactly for the first time.
Yeah.
But what was the scariest thing for you?
Well, the scariest thing was everything I was going through, all the complications I was going through, and me not understanding what it is. And, when you know something wrong and you're constantly asking, and they're giving you kind of the runaround. So all the swelling up I was doing, they were saying it was normal, but the type of swelling I was doing, now, years later, and me looking back, I know that wasn't normal.
Facial swelling.
Swelling, my ankles, technically everything.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that I couldn't eat my entire pregnancy. So I was losing a lot of weight when I should have been gaining a lot of weight. And then towards the end of giving birth, the way that I swelled up completely was abnormal.
Did you have the traditionally expected things like the headaches, any vision changes?
Yes, I definitely did. Once I hit 30 weeks, I could not see worth nothing.
Uh-huh.
I was definitely blind. And that's part of the preeclampsia that I didn't know at the time. Mm-hmm. Again, they didn't diagnose me with it. But I know that's what I had looking back on it.
Absolutely. What about your second birth? Did you have any additional fears? Did you carry that trauma from the first birth to your second?
I was absolutely terrified with getting pregnant a second time, but it was a lot different. It was a little easier carrying my second baby than it was my first. I didn't have to undergo none of the problems I had with him. Only problem I had with her, is they kind of pushed me into early induction. And, you know, that kind of wasn't like my say-so when she didn't need to be.
Right.
So that was a bad experience, I would say.
How do you feel about inductions? Because I know that we got kind of rushed into that last one as well.
Well, I don't like inductions because, you know, I know the difference between going right into labor when your body is ready to, like I did with my first son, and it was more of an easier process when my body was telling me, okay, now it's ready, and it comes out of nowhere. Versus I'm sitting here normal and then they're forcing it, and it's a lot more painful than it is going through natural.
Usually when we are talking about induction, I explain it to my clients like it is going into a battle with the body for the baby, because the body is supposed to tell you when the baby is supposed to come out. But when we start inductions in any method, whether it be chemical or manual or, you know, some non-chemical method like a cook cath or something to that effect, it is still forcing the body to jump into a phase of labor that it didn't go into naturally. So this actually usually takes quite some time longer, but it's hard on the mother and oftentimes also on the babies. How does it make you feel when you hear statistics like Black mothers are 2 to 3 times more likely to die due to some childbirth-related or pregnancy-related issue that was usually 60% or more preventable?
It's just fearful. It makes me fearful. You know, kind of sad that they look at us and they just think we're not like everybody else. We feel the same pains, if not worse. But it just goes back to history on how us in a whole, how we're looked at.
Absolutely. When we did a little bit of childbirth education, right, with your third, and a lot of people don't realize that childbirth education is not necessarily us telling you what to expect. It's also teaching in advocacy how to adjust as different changes may come up or complications may arise. It's a lot more of you honing into this specific pregnancy. We know that each baby is different, each pregnancy is different. The mother, depending on her age or what stage she's in life or different traumas that she's experienced, all of that could end up completely different. So each childbirth education, I don't generalize it when we do our childbirth education here. We cater it specifically to what her circumstances are. We talk more in depth if this is baby number 1. But if this is baby number 2 or number 3, we talk about how quickly baby number 2 comes, or how number 3 is kind of a wild card. You can't exactly, we did not have that baby pinned at all.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, we talk about the importance of knowing how to shift, how to pivot, how to advocate for yourself, what to expect. Education on medical terms that are commonly used that usually go right up over our heads because it's not broken down in layman's terms. Did you feel more prepared for your third birth?
No, I still didn't feel prepared for now.
And tell us why.
Well, just all the circumstances I was going through, and I thought I would have more time. That being one. And like the day I went in to give birth, I'm thinking it's just a regular doctor's appointment. And so then it got scary with them telling me all this different stuff, like, oh, we think you might have a leak in your bag, and you know, and he's measuring small. I found that absolutely odd, which I was so happy that she was able to make it on time, because I'm just like, how can you tell that they're measuring small, you know, and I was measuring bigger last week.
Yeah, you had been measuring about 2 weeks ahead for a while.
So now I'm just like, it just doesn't make any sense to what y'all saying. And
so sometimes that happens when the baby's dropped deep into the pelvic cavity, because the measurements are usually done based on fundal height. So if baby's dropped deeper into the pelvic cavity, then it can make baby appear to be more weeks behind instead of ahead or right on target. That was an interesting feat, right? We got rush right over to labor and delivery. And what was the first thing they do? Oh, we need to get you down to ultrasound, right? Mm-hmm. So as we are dependent on ultrasounds, we get these warm and fuzzy feelings. Oh, I'm going to get to see the baby. But when you're told something's wrong, you don't go in with the warm and fuzzies to that ultrasound. You just don't. You kind of holding your breath and you're like, okay, what exactly? And then the sonographer or the ultrasound tech, they can't tell us if they see something wrong. They can only basically give us some sort of results. Oh, baby's in such and such percentile. Do you remember what percentile they said your baby was in?
I don't remember exactly, but I do know they were saying he was measuring incredibly small, and that was incredibly wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, so she was told that her baby was measuring in the 3rd percentile, and they were like, oh, you delivering today. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. What was going through your mind when you got told that 1, baby was only in the 3rd percentile, and 2, you would be delivering today instead of 3 to 4 weeks
Well,
later,
obviously, I was extremely scared the entire time because, again, I thought it was just a regular doctor's appointment. Everything felt fine. Mm-hmm. And so you're getting told this, and you just really don't know what to think at this point. It's just, you're just praying for the best, really. Absolutely. And then, it was also getting frustrating when the doctors seemed like they didn't know what they were doing. I know you remember me getting mad when they constantly poking me. It was like, how do you getting all these people coming in and no one can find a vein? Like, it was literally like 10 different people, and I'm getting poked, I'm getting frustrated there. Then I'm getting told I was measuring different at the hospital than my OBG. She didn't know what she was doing either. So, I mean, I felt like I probably needed about another week if he would have came along by himself, because he was a decent sized baby.
Really decent sized baby. As we were getting really prepared for this and really trying to run around and get all the things that we needed done, do you remember a point where you were like, okay, the childbirth education prepared me for this, or was it always just like, I don't even know what's happening at this point?
Kind of both.
Okay.
Kind of both. I started remember when, okay, you play these games, like these scenarios. So I did start thinking about that. And then it kind of did with a lot of other stuff, like going through with my husband. And now that's when you get to the point like, okay, I don't know what's happening now. Like, it's just too much, even though I don't feel like nothing can really prepare you for what happens.
Yeah.
You can talk about the negatives, the positives. Nothing prepares you for exactly what's going to happen at that moment.
That's real and that's honest. Like when you said when things happen with your husband, you weren't in control of that, but you also didn't exactly feel in control of what was going on with you, and it was your body. So it's one of those things where we have to end up trusting the medical system. And in trusting the medical system, that can be a scary thing in itself. When you know what the history is, when you're walking in with your own traumas that they have no clue about. So they're not conscious of your triggers. They're not conscious of the different ways that you respond because a certain scenario feels a certain way or too familiar. In that instance, when you felt like you needed to push, do you remember where you were?
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, at first I didn't know that's what was happening. I was on the toilet, and my body kind of just did what it wanted to do. You're like, you better not be pushing on that part.
Well, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys. The toilet is one of my favorite tools, if you will, that helps move labor along, especially when you're trying to get over a hump in that sweet spot of that like 7-8 centimeters. Yeah. I think before you got on the toilet, you were
fast.
like 7.
It went fast.
And she was probably on there 20 minutes maybe, and she was like, oh, I was like, I think you need to get up. I would love to see you get up right now. And she's like, I can't, I just want to sit here. But when you told me, I think I need to go ahead and push, did you feel like everybody in the room was on board?
You know what? I'm not gonna lie to you. All I seen was you and the other nurse who was trying to get me to get to the bed.
We almost lifted her off of the toilet to carry her back to the bed. It was very interesting.
I didn't see nobody else, so I wasn't thinking about nobody else.
Mm-hmm. Good.
But that's crazy.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking about it. I was just ready to push. I just let my body do whatever it wanted to do at that point. I didn't have control of it. It actually did what it wanted to do.
Absolutely. So we talked about baby being in the 3rd percentile, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your baby was born, and then we did some measurements. What did your baby weigh?
6 pounds, 8 ounces.
For those of you that don't understand what we're talking about here, that is definitely not the 3rd percentile. That is actually well within the normal range for babies that...
And he still had 4 more weeks to go.
Yeah, and he still had 4 more weeks to go. So this was a 36-weeker. He was going to be a big old dude. But, in having had that experience, was there anything that you would have liked to have seen go differently?
I kind of wish that they would have just gave it a little bit more time to let my body do what it needed to do. The induction, I feel like that wasn't needed because I kind of was dilating on my own anyways. So
Absolutely.
I wish I kind of would have opposed to that. That really wasn't necessary. But other than that, I mean, I don't think anything could have went different. I really appreciate that you were there, making me feel safe the entire way. You never left my side. So that was a definite plus for me. And that made it a whole lot easier versus my other 2 births. I will say, like, where were you my other 2 births?
Right. If only we could rewind time, right?
Right.
I think that as I watched you go through your process, you realized that you were stronger than what you thought. For me, in advocacy and as a doula, I'm always thinking about the other possibilities. So I'm like always trying to stay one step ahead. But when we think about, when you said, I wish that we wouldn't have had to do the induction, that's one of the instances where we're like, we don't have control over that. We literally have to trust the information that's being presented to us. I always say, doctors are practicing. What does that mean? They don't have it exactly down. They are trained in a field and they are trying. That's not to say that don't trust your doctors. That's not to say that they were absolutely wrong. But that does lean into listening to the birthing person, listening to the mother when she's talking to you about her body, when she's talking to you about the way that she feels. You said you had undiagnosed preeclampsia. Literally, there should have been some labs. There should have been an assessment of all the different things that you were going through.
And my blood pressure was the thing that they seen first.
Yeah.
And that was the reason why they sent us over as well.
Yeah, so with all of those different things, it's like, how do we learn when to trust the system, right? Especially when the statistics show that the system is not exactly for us. I want to quote a couple of things where it says, Black women are 21% times more likely than white women to give birth via cesarean in America. Why is that? Why is that? Why is there such a huge gap there? And we know that if that induction didn't pan out the way that it was supposed to, we would have ended up where?
A C-section.
In a C-section. So we're in this battle with the body for the baby with this induction. And because the body's like, no, it's not time. Actually, we're good. They're like, oh, nope, baby needs to come out because baby's at the 3rd percentile. Baby's born, and then baby's not at the 3rd percentile. It almost feels like, golly, was that pointless?
And
like, I'm glad to have my baby here. But because of that, you had an additional stress and strain.
And it went totally fast.
Mentally
Faster.
and emotionally, yeah. And emotionally, how did you feel when you felt so rushed? When it all just started happening?
I don't know if you remember, but after I gave birth, I was a little confused.
Mm-hmm.
I was confused.
Yeah.
And I wasn't like that with my first 2.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't like that. I was kind of like, I had them, and y'all like, you gonna hold the baby? You just had the baby. Oh, I did.
Yeah. Literally, she had a look of shock on her face, like she didn't even realize that she had pushed the baby out.
Because it went so fast, and I was not expecting it to just go like that, because we're talking, and we're normal, I'm feeling them here and here. I'm like, okay, it hurt a little bit, but it's not there. Then you tell me, get on a bouncy ball, next thing you know, I'm in mid, like, back to back to back, and I'm just like, what
Absolutely.
Then the next second, my water break, and then 30 minutes later, I pushed him out.
And when she says it went fast like that, she is not missing a beat. Like, they thought even that they had more time, because when she sat down on the toilet, like I said, she was like a 7. And they were like, oh, okay, you know, just keep at it. And I was like, you know, she sounds different. Her breathing has changed. And now she's kind of like blocking people out. I know that consistently you were responding to my voice, and then after a while you only wanted to hear my voice.
I think I got mad at you for a second,
Yep.
And I had to apologize.
Yep.
I was like, I didn't mean to yell at you like that.
I never take offense to mamas yelling at me. You go through what you go through, and I can't feel that pain for you. So hey, it is what it is.
That's all I want.
And how did you feel going through that without having any drugs this time?
That was different, I'll tell you that. I had an epidural with the first 2, so I felt half of what I felt going through 100% natural. Like, probably if I wanted to get that epidural, it wouldn't have been no time anyways. That's how fast I went. Yeah. But I felt only half that pain. So being there, and I actually loved the experience of my body just doing it. I literally didn't have to push. It did it on its own. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that experience. So I love that. I actually had to force myself to push for my other 2. Didn't have to do that with this time. Mm-hmm. But the pain getting there and how fast it went there, I was like, I didn't even have time to even prepare myself for it to get there.
Absolutely. And shout out to Dad, because he came through, it looked like he was sliding in the home. I didn't even go front when he came in. He was like, I made it, you know. But it was very, giving birth during the pandemic has afforded a lot of privacy. One, you have to have less conversations with family about, oh no, we're not having all these people up at the hospital, because literally those are the hospital rules. But we also had a situation where her husband was like being held off at the door, and the nurses are on the line like, let him up now. There was something else that was going on at the hospital where the security was on high alert. You remember that?
Yeah.
And we were trying to figure out where he was, because he was like just at the parking garage, right? It shouldn't have taken as long as it took for him to get there. And then of course all the nurses are like, he made it by the skin of his teeth. Like, as baby was coming out, he was sliding into the door screaming he made it. But when you gave birth to your oldest child, that was pre-pandemic life. Giving birth during the pandemic, what do you feel the difference was?
Well, with my first child, I was able to have, you know, like my brothers, all this different support around me, to laugh at me, joke with me, you know, all of this. So I was able to have, you know, obviously the love all around. And then obviously there was no pandemic, so it wasn't so, what's the word I want to use? I can't even think of it.
High intensity stress.
Right. There you go. Yeah, I was able to kind of just try to relax at least, you know. With it being the pandemic, like you said, it's more rules, more like they want you to have a mask on. Like, come on now, how am I supposed to breathe with a mask on? And I'm going through all this. Yeah.
I think that was a huge thing. Like, labor is already intense enough. Then you slap on a mask while you're trying to do that. It's like, okay, I feel like I'm suffocating a little bit, and I'm supposed to be breathing, giving these cleansing breaths. My cleansing breaths is bringing some sort of fabric onto my face. That does not feel good. If you had to tell a new mom one important thing about being a Black new mom preparing for birth, what would it be?
Trust yourself. Trust your body. Listen to your body.
I love that. So some of the statistics that also came up was Black women are 2 to 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy related issues than white women. They have found, as I mentioned before, that between 60 to 68% of these issues are preventable. So it begs us to ask the question, what needs to change? It's a systemic problem. It's not the mothers themselves, as we have featured different things like the movie Aftershock, where from the father's perspective, after losing the mothers of their children, they talk about all the experiences. The term aftershock doesn't come from the feeling that they have. It's literally like the earthquake, and then you deal with the aftermath of that earthquake. The earthquake being, she came in to give birth and she did not walk out. So then how does the family function there afterward? We know that it's an uphill battle to fight. I love the fact that more women are interested in using doulas. Medicaid has picked up a doula reimbursement program. So this is likely to ensure that more women feel better support and have additional advocates with them when they're going through this supposed to be beautiful time in their lives. Bringing life into the world is such a beautiful experience. But when we talk to most Black mothers, they talk about the fear. They talk about the scare. Now, that's not to take away from the beauty of it, because we love our babies, absolutely. But we face a fear that most women don't walk in with. There is a level of trust that has to be regained that can actually be generational trauma. And so as we have programs like the ones that Milk Like Mine have, we have teenage programs, we have fatherhood programs, we have breastfeeding support groups, postpartum support groups. We created all of this to help build a better community support system and help families to learn exactly what they need to feel better going into these situations and how to better respond to advocate for themselves and potentially save their own lives. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in with us. We will have another episode of Spilled Milk tomorrow where we feature another mother. Shania, thank you for coming in and gracing us with your presence. Beautiful.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And so we will see you all tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in.